Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibone, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I'm speaking with Alex and Jakub from What's Your Spaghetti Policy? Hey guys, thanks for speaking with me today. How is it on the East Coast?
It's hot. I love it. It's great, honestly. You know, the weather's nice today. It's a nice balmy 85 degrees outside right now, so
it's too hot. Where we are, it's very humid. And Jakub and I both, we clash on what we like as far as temperature is concerned. The colder, the better for me. The hotter, the better for him. So, you know, I should say, though, you have achieved a feat that most people have not. You have Jakub. You were able to snag him in because he's an enigma. He's hard to nail down sometimes. And most of the time, anytime we do podcasts of our podcast, he's not. So, you know, you've hit the jackpot today. Oh no. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do.
We'll just wait. It's all good. We'll wait.
Knock the cameras off, guys.
Okay, what now?
Yeah, let's knock the cameras off.
You
Sorry.
Turn the camera off?
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
I like the spinner.
Not stretch. Yeah, we're all in darkness now. Yeah,
it's mysterious.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go pop my shirt off. And my socks too. That'd be nice.
Real quick, I did want to say that just to get into the mood, I got me some Walker's biscuits.
That sounds delicious. Yeah.
We have some friends over in the UK.
I've got a Bakewell tart and a cup of Earl Grey tea.
All right. I'm not a big tea person. I love coffee, though.
Dude, I love tea so much, man. Earl Grey is pretty solid. I get it at Panera whenever we go. It's a little. What would you consider? Everybody has Panera, right?
I don't know. It's overpriced hospital food.
You know, a band I used to be in, we used to have this thing where every week we'd get together at a cafeteria, and we used to just catch up with each other, you know, outside of the rehearsal, but just in general catch up with each other there with a pot of two pots actually of Earl Grey tea while we're there, and that's where we used to have like our, you know, meeting outside of the rehearsals.
Right.
That sounds delicious. That sounds like a good time. We need to do that more often.
Yeah, because you know,
just hang it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, when you're in a rehearsal situation or a recording situation, things can get a bit tough in bands, and you know it can come to blows at times. Whereas in a cafeteria with a pot of tea, it's different.
Right. I talk to Jakub every day, so I don't need to have tea with him.
Why not, man? It'd be fun. We just hang out, have a cup of tea, just relax, let the world flow by us. It'd be sick.
That's what it does, anyways.
You actually record together at any point, or is it always done remotely?
So we used to always record together in person, and then obviously the pandemic hit, so then we went remote for a while, and then as the pandemic sort of tapered off a little bit, we got back, and then he moved. It's like, you know, it used to be like a 15-minute drive, and
15 minutes farther away.
And yes, so it's an additional 15. So it's 30 minutes. He's a slow driver. It takes him forever to get here. And then we were just like, you know what? Like, we're such a well-oiled machine at this point. And then after episode 200, we decided, like, you know, let's just do it. It's so much easier and more convenient for us just to do it this way. And you don't really, the way we do it, you don't really gain or lose any sort of quality audio or anything like that. So we've just, you know, the last, I don't know, 10 episodes, the last 15 episodes, probably 14 were done remotely anyways. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's it's, but I see him outside of the podcast. So
Jacob, you would be the perfect driver for Miss Daisy, then, would you?
Oh yeah, no, I love to go safe speeds a lot of the time. I've ridden with Alex in a car, and it's you kind of just have to just assume that if you're gonna die, this is the moment you're gonna die, and just kind of relax and let go and just ride along.
It's not that bad.
And the cursing is complimentary, comes with a drive. It's great. And we yell at drivers together. It's fun. So I just like to relax and take my time, just really enjoy the world around me.
I don't know how it is over there for you, but over here, people just have a general lack of awareness and they just don't give a shit about anybody else. And so they just are just the worst drivers in the world. Everyone says that where they live, but I feel like where we are, we can give it at least a top 5 in the world worst places.
Trust me, I drive for a living. I come across some absolute, as we would say in the UK, morons on the road.
Oh yeah, we've got those. One of them is over here in the podcast.
Nah, I like to take my time, be safe about it. It's great.
Don't you find sometimes though that when you if you're not got to be somewhere, or it's just you're going out for the sake of going out to get away from it all, sometimes it's nice to just get in the car and have a steady drive and almost just go anywhere that's just go, do you know what, I'm going to go out, and that sort of thing.
I
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go first. I asked the last question.
I don't have that luxury to be able to do that, but also, like, in that sense, the with how bad people are at driving around here, they're gonna ruin your vibe. Like, that you can't just go and chill and go at your own pace, because someone inevitably is going to ruin your vibe and make the anger come out. They're going to cut you off. They're almost going to hit you. You're going to miss a red light because they were too busy on their phone, whatever. Like, even if you don't have somewhere to be, someone's going to ruin your vibe here.
Such a Californian answer.
That's me told.
I just like to relax, like I always try to approach. I do get mad at other drivers for sure, but it's a split second, like 2-3 seconds of yelling at them, cursing at them if my kids aren't in the car. And then just kind of like after that, I kind of forget about it. I don't really like, I'm never going to see that person again.
Very non-confrontational though, whereas I am the exact opposite. I'll tell somebody they're a moron. Jacob will be like, yeah, this is totally fine. And then when they leave, he'll tell them they're a moron.
I'm just going to hang out, dude. I'm never going to see that person again. There's no reason in getting my blood pressure up for their sake,
Armor, you are, dude.
But therein lies a good thing that I've noticed. I mean, I've only listened to a couple of episodes so far, but there's that magic there between you both that is, to me personally, the great thing about podcasts that have more than one person in, where there are similarities, sure, but it's the little differences between people that present a show and in friendships that create that interest. Essentially, it's like when I'm listening, it's like I'm listening to friends chatting with each other. Oh yeah,
that's beautiful way of explaining it. By the way,
that is essentially how this whole thing sort of started, right?
Yep.
I tend to go on diatribes and I tend to talk a lot. That's why I started a podcast, right? I had a podcast previously, and then for various reasons, like you said, like, it's hard to sit there and talk to yourself a lot. And so with my first podcast, I just ran out of people. I didn't have anybody to like talk to, whatever. And that was over a decade ago. And then Jacob and I were working together, and I gravitate towards people that I think are very interesting. And I mean, Jacob is an oddball. He is, but like, I think it's a good thing. Like, I don't mean that in a negative connotation. I think that he's very unique in nature. And I just, as we started talking, I was like, bro, like, we should start a podcast. And like, Jacob is kind of reserved and
I don't like to commit to things.
Well, there's that, but he's also not very good at commitment is one thing, but talking in general. And he will even admit that, like, in doing this, he's been more comfortable in his skin, more comfortable in sort of talking, and the friends that we've made along the way and sort of things like that.
Yeah.
but like he just like, I was like, I was like, I think you're very interesting. And I think that and like the thing about Jakub is it's not a bit. Like he'll say literally some of the most off the wall things. And you're thinking, oh, this is just like for laughs, but it's a genuine thought that comes out of his head. And so I was like, I can exploit this jokingly, but I was like, I think I thought that he was interesting enough that I was like, I think other people will also find him interesting, which then I inflated his ego. And I mean, we were going to do depending on when this drops, it'll be like episode 205. So that tells you all you need to know there.
Wow.
But as time has gone, and we've also never missed a week. We started doing this in July of 2019, and we have never missed a week of an episodes. We've done at least, there's been times where he's been gone and I've gotten a guest host, and but we have never missed a week when it comes to releasing. And over time it became like this commitment thing where it's like, okay, every Wednesday, whatever, yada, yada. Sometimes we have to adjust it and record like to accommodate other guests and stuff like that. But it's not even like an obligation anymore. It is a scheduled time of friendship is basically how we look at it, to where even though we talk every day, like throughout the day, we still have this time every week that regardless of what happens, we're going to hang out for an hour. We're going to shoot the shit. We're going to talk about some dumb stuff. And that's pretty much what has happened, because I never wanted to, in terms of like, okay, here's a nickel's worth of free advice, right? I never wanted to do a podcast that would corner us into a specific niche, because, you know, you and it's fine if people do that. But for us, it's like, we like a lot of things, and I don't want to be pigeonholed into like, well, we always got to talk about A, B, and C. We can talk about A through Z, right? And so it's just, I love conversation. I love just like sitting down and talking to somebody. Here's another thing people don't know. If you've never listened to our episode, it is one take. There are no cuts. There are no stoppage. It's one take from the moment we hit record to the moment we're done. There's no breaks. There's nothing. And it's free flowing. We have topics, we have like outlines and stuff like that. But the whole thing is just to interweave this conversation. Like it's like you and your friends are sitting down, and the vibe is that, okay, like you said, it's two friends hanging out, and I just wanted to do a podcast that I would listen to, because ultimately this is a self-serving thing. Because if you're doing, you want people to listen to your podcast, but you want ultimately to be satisfied with what you're doing. And we joke all the time. It's like, sure, we would love a bunch of listeners, and the more people, the better. But at the end of the day, like, the reason we still do this every week is because we genuinely enjoy doing it every week. So,
and we don't have like any intentions of stopping at the moment, because again, like, since we do it, basically, if we do this for ourselves more than anything, I don't think we really like plan on changing the format. Even if we got famous, I think it'd still be one of those things where now I'm anxious every single episode, but we're still going to say the dumb stuff. We're still going to like hang out and relax and just shoot the shit, So
we did change it a little bit on 200, where after it was 199 episodes essentially of just me and Jakub. I mean, pretty much if you'd listened from the beginning, we have exhausted our opinions on everything. And there's like no real new stories to tell. So with 200, we sort of introduced a little bit of a change just to kind of like freshen up the pod a little bit. And we have a rotating third chair where we get someone, we don't consider them a guest, we consider them a guest host. And they come in, and that's why it's like a low form of commitment, where you only have to be here once. You only have to show up one week, and we'll get somebody else the next week. It also forces us to sort of go out of our realm of our inner circle of people. And we've used some of those, and, we've made a bunch of friends by doing this podcast but we're trying to also bring in new perspectives into the podcast, because again, our perspectives have been pretty much driven into the ground after 200 episodes. And we still say the podcast is still relatively the same exact thing. It's just now you have a third person's voice in there who maybe has a different perspective on something that we're talking about that normally it would just be me and Jakub. So.
Wow. It's all right. There was so much in there. I mean, you explained
Sorry.
you've knocked out of the ballpark there. The first 4 points of on the bullet point. Well done, that man. Well, both. But yeah. So really, you would both be speaking with each other anyway, because you're both friends with each other. So essentially, why would it come to an end anyhow? Because all this is essentially is just a more structured, to a degree, version of the chats that you would both be having anyway.
Exactly. Pretty much. Yes, that's what we were going for. And like my take on why we started this is just because we really, like Alex said, we wanted to just have a podcast where it's just two guys, and like the listener could be considered the third friend, just coming to hang out, like join us on the couch and like just relax and listen to us rant and yell at each other. So
yeah, I mean, almost every. Oh, sorry. No, I was just say like we've had guests, over this span of time, and almost everyone. I mean, you always have the obligatory like, hey, thanks for having me, but almost everybody that's ever been on the show has been like, man, that was a fun time. Like I had Jakub left for about a span of 5 weeks because he wasn't, but his wife was having their second kid.
I was having a child.
And so I don't know if you are aware of who Danielle Sharp is.
Yeah.
Okay. So she had never done a podcast before. And obviously there's that inherent, like the nerves of, well, I don't know these people. There, as well, in this case, it was me. I don't know this person. And you're coming into like somebody else's show, but you can tell from the beginning of the episode towards the end of you can tell that she got much more comfortable being able to just sit down and have a conversation. Like another one of our friends, Amy Mallett, she used to live in London, and we adore her, and she just loves us. And it's never just like an hour-long episode when she comes on. It's always like 2.5 hours, because you just lose track of time because you're just having these great conversations with people. And so, not to pat ourselves on the back, but we've always tried to make this there's no pressure. That's why it's like you don't want to have, oh, well, here's all these bullet points and these things that we want to talk about. It's just like, hey, man, here's what we might talk about. Just get yourself familiar with these things. But if somebody comes on and they have all these great stories to tell, then by all means, tell these stories. Just because again, I love conversation, and I love shows about nothing, which is also the name, What's Your Spaghetti Policy, came from the show Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And when we were trying to come up with a name, we didn't want to go with the Alex and Jakub show. We wanted something that was
the hell is this?
A sort of if you know the show, you understand the reference. But then in the very beginning, we got people that thought it was an Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like a review show, but literally it was just a throwaway phrase in the show that we love. And that show is ultimately about nothing as well, just sort of like Seinfeld. And we just okay, cool. We'll pick this. And then we sort of kind of turned that entire thing into our own amalgam of what we abbreviated it WISP, WISP, and our listeners are whispers and sort of things. And I
will say to pat Alex on the back too, is also to the point of with guests and stuff. Alex is great at making people feel comfortable as far as our guests and stuff like that. And I'm not good at meeting people, but he is by far the best person at meeting somebody new and being able to find stuff to talk about. And it's he really does help bridge the gap between guests and making the show enjoyable. But also he's just really good at doing the podcast in general, as far as taking care of everything. I don't know if people know this about our show, but he does literally everything. And I just bring the comedy. But yeah, it's a show is a very well-oiled machine. I think a lot of that credit goes to Alex. And then
to that point, point, we've always wanted it to be a conversation, not an interrogation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Jakub, I found that doing this show over the time that I've done it, because I've been doing it since October of 2020, I think I've found that I'm a bit more open to people, even in my own life outside of the show now, where I used to be a bit introverted maybe, or a bit, insular and a shy individual, essentially. I think this show has made me a bit more open to being able to chat with people. Has it done the same thing for you?
Oh yeah, I'd say so for sure. I from time to time I'll go back and listen to older episodes. And like it's the first like 10 or 15 episodes, like you can definitely tell that I'm reserved as far as like what I should say, nervous. Exactly. The first episode, especially, like I hear the nerves in my voice, but as we've went along and like kind of polished things out, I definitely feel like it's opened me up as far as being more communicable. Okay, I still can't talk though. Speaking of which, I'm more, I would say, not as introverted. I definitely like have my moments where like I'd like to be at home and whatnot, but I don't feel as uncomfortable meeting new people now.
There's a comfortability that you didn't used to have that you have now.
Yeah, there we go.
You can tell Alex is the creative writer, can't you?
Yeah, he writes stuff. You know, he's good with words.
He is. We'll
I
get
like
to
the English
that
language.
We'll get into. Oh, I love wordplay, and songwriting. So, well, I mean, as much as I said about structure, essentially what you do is, I'm guessing you have. Do you sort of like both of you take notes of things that sort of like jump out at you, and you think, oh, I'm going to have to mention this. I'm going to have to mention that
all the time. Like, yeah, I would say that there are slow weeks, obviously. Getting later on at the episodes, like Alex said earlier, like we've obviously like we've exhausted a lot of our personal opinions on things and like life stories and whatnot. So like nowadays it's a lot of the time, like we see something in the news and we normally try to go for topics that would otherwise not be as talked about because, you know, mainstream media and whatnot. Yeah. So every day is almost like just send, like we find something that we see it's hilarious, we'll send it to each other and be like, yeah, we definitely need to talk about this week. It'd be hilarious. And so it's just like back and forth, basically all week up until the episode. We're sending stuff back and forth to each other. So,
and to piggyback off that, the only real rule we had when we started it, because I mean, like, what was it, 2019? And
yeah, nothing was going on during that.
There
time
was,
either.
you know, a big political, for lack of a better word, uprising, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it was very polarizing depending on which side you were on. And it was just exhausting. Like, even if you didn't give a shit, it was just exhausting everything was just consumed by politics and just dumb stuff. And it's like, okay, well, like, let's not talk about politics. We're not going to talk about our feelings on, you know, a certain president or whatever. Let's make this as inviting and like basically be able to turn your brain off and like talk about the dumb shit that doesn't get talked about, where, you know, like we had this whole bit and we have callbacks to older episodes, but I think one of the great things about the way our show is set up is that you don't necessarily have to listen to all 205 episodes to enjoy it. Sure, if you have, there's like a callback to episode like 10 that we'll randomly throw in there, but, you know, we'll talk about stuff like the Hollywood meat party, where there was this article that came out where they were trying to find Hollywood actors and actresses like DNA and making them into like sausages. And it was just like this whole thing. And where, you know, there was like a movie like company that wanted to film something on the moon. And it was just it was very much so like an elitist filled episode where they're talking about, sending people to space, like elite to space. And that's the sort of things we talk about. And what's funny enough is like it'll be a slow week, and those turn out to be some of the most fun episodes because we just riff on something, or something will trigger in your brain. It'll be like, oh my gosh, you know, this is funny. One of my absolute favorite episodes it's called The Most Relatable Episode Ever. And I have not laughed so hard at myself and at Jacob. And it's literally, we just talk about three things in the whole episode. And it's my nightmare scenario of going to the doctor and just not being able to piss in a cup. Like, I just couldn't do it. And like, it just becomes this whole nightmare situation that is so funny, because if you can't laugh at yourself, you know, what's the point? But we try to be, we are not naive to think that we're like, oh, our opinion is superior. No, like this is just our opinions. And, we are relatable because we're two dads, we're in our 30s. And we have the same sort of aggravations and emotions that everybody else has. And we're not pretending to be people that we're not, because at the end of the day, no matter what I do in life, for better or for worse, and Jakub can attest, I try to be as authentic as possible. I try to be me in every facet. I don't let, oh, hey man, I listen to your podcast. Awesome, bro. That's cool. Like, I don't try to be something I'm not. I've always just sort of operated in that way, to where like what you listen to is what you get. You either like it
what you're gonna
or
get,
you don't. I am not going to put on a facade for somebody's enjoyment. You are going to like me or you are going to hate me. But what you cannot question is that like I am me. And more often than not, that does not work out because, Jakub and I have two very drastic different personalities. But what's crazy is we work very well together and we mesh very well. But yeah.
So, I mean, essentially, I'm guessing then that you just sort of like have a basic idea of like little bullet, you might go, well, we'll talk about this, and then that's it. Everything else that comes from that is made up on the spot. So you might go one of the episodes from, was it last year, when you were talking about the stupid situation with the Harley Quinn cartoon and the Batman, and and the whole Batman, going down on Catwoman and all this, that, and the other.
Yes.
And that, I'm just guessing that all you put was like Harley Quinn, outrage over toys or something as a note, and it just went from there.
Yeah. So
basically,
a lot of it, yeah. A lot of that is like us just, it depends on who adds it to the outline. Like on the outline, a lot of the times I have my thoughts, like when I'm reading or researching stuff or whatever for the podcast, I'll have my thoughts then. And so like I for most of my stuff, I can't remember my thoughts and feelings on a certain thing, like on the spot. And so I'll write a lot of what I have to say like down, but it's not so much that I'm like rehearsing it off the paper as it is just like something to remind me of how I felt at that specific moment. But yeah, for the most part, like a lot of it's just us putting topics on the outline, maybe having like a line or two about like a TLDR, too long didn't read, of like what the article is about, and we'll go from there. So, but yeah, like a lot of I think our best bits are us just like a random word will trigger like a 10-minute long diatribe where we're just back and forth, either riffing on something, or I have an opinion about something that Alex doesn't necessarily agree with, or he has an opinion about something that I don't necessarily agree with, and we just go back and forth from there. Each episode, you just don't know what you're going to get with it. Like we could, I remember several times where there's like this big article that's out there, everybody's talking about it, everybody's making jokes about it, and like we'll bring it up, and one of us will mention something random about it, and then we'll take a complete left turn and start talking about that thing and completely forget to go back to the article that it was all originally about. Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do in episodes is when we have, a lot of times I'll play devil's advocate and make Jakub defend his argument, even though I also agree with the general basis of his argument that he's making. And I love to get him to try to flip. And it doesn't take much. He'll be like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Because he just like either A, loses interest, or B, doesn't actually care.
I do get to the point where I stop caring about something. Like I'm not willing to fight anymore for it. You can call me a coward or whatever you want, but I know where my time should be spent, and it's not sitting here arguing about something. So I'm just like, you know what? That's fine. You can have that. You win this one.
You mentioned in the same episode, you mentioned Diablo 4, the game as well, which jumped out at me because Diablo 2 is one of my favorite games.
I didn't even know we talked about it back then. Jeez.
Yeah, that's probably when they announced it on that episode.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's out now.
It is. But, wow, about time. But what was I going to say? I mean, I take notes of these shows, as you've probably noticed from the blog that I put out, and it's one of those shows where you'll mention so many things in passing. It's almost like stop listening. Got to take note of this. Oh crap! They've mentioned something else. Bloody hell! They've mentioned something else. Can they slow the down?
Yeah, we do that. That's probably me though, because I'm always trying to keep at least. We say we have no structure, but we do have structure, and we always try to keep. Or me, I try to keep the show on the tracks of some point so that it's not this like gigantic train wreck.
Oh God, every episode would be 2 hours long if like we didn't have that train track put down. And yeah, it'd be bad.
I have become increasingly better at transitioning from one story to another. And you don't, and it like again, we don't stop and hey, let's talk about this now. Like it's literally like just going from point to point to point to point. As a conversation would go, because I mean, I know there are times in life where you're talking to somebody and you're like, you end the conversation and that's awkward, right? Like, and then like you have like 5 minutes of like, hey, like you're standing at the water cooler and it's like, oh, by the way, and so it's just, I don't know. I can't imagine, like I see people all the time talking about how hard it is to edit a podcast and I'm just like, can't relate. Don't know what that is. I mean, I throw an our intro in there and then that's about it.
But so top topics. So it's just basically whatever you've noticed in the week leading up to it. Because I mean, I get the impression that they're not recorded too far ahead from release.
We record on Wednesdays and we release on Fridays. But what's funny is almost 80% of the time something big happens on a Thursday, something that like we were dying to talk about, and then we end up having to talk about it a week later where like,
or we just forget and don't talk about it at all.
But like a lot of times it's like, oh, of course this comes out after we record, but yeah, I mean, up until, right before we record, we're still looking, it's just some sort of, like we just talked like last week, we spent like 25 minutes talking about orcas and how they're apparently there's this uprising and they're learning how to ram boats in Gibraltar. And it's like, okay. And then so like on its basis, like, okay, that's neat. And then like we spend an entire 20 minutes with this like fictional situation about like what would happen if you actually got, and just like, we just go on these rants and diatribes. And shout out to Amy again, who said that like because like we've got quite a few listeners over in the UK, and she said like maybe one of the reasons why is because it's very much reminiscent of you and your friends hanging out in a pub, just like talking about nothing, right? And just talking about nonsense and like the art of conversation and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Again, it brings me back to being in a band, and most of our time was spent talking about crap and not actually having anything to do with the music.
Right.
That's friendship for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned so where did you get the music from then? Is that one of yourselves?
No, we had, if you've listened, I don't know, you've listened to a couple episodes, so it's like you went back and listened to the first one, which I'm sorry. That first one was just like, I think a royalty free pulled off like YouTube, and I was like, fine, whatever, because we were just trying to like throw things together. And then once we sort of started to get into the flow of how the show was going to work and stuff like that, we changed it up at the beginning of 2020, and we found this guy named Albie Robles, and he's a voice actor, and he did the voiceover for us. And I just found another royalty-free song that best fit that phrase. Like I got the phrase first, which I wrote the intro, and he just recorded it, and I found something that I could piece it together, and it worked out well. We have another listener. His name's Jim Plum. Shout out to him. He's actually in the UK too. He does a lot of our like our new thing is we do a weekly top 5 every week. And so he's done those. We did for like anytime there's like a segment, if you will, like we'll throw segments in there occasionally. He's done those. He's done a lot of our sounds for us. He'll make them, send them to me, and we just throw them in there. But yeah, it's just royalty free stuff.
That's the weirdest thing ever, because Jim Plum is a friend of mine.
No way.
Yeah. He's been on the show.
Cool. That's so great. I love Jim.
He's been on this show.
Shout out. That's awesome. Small world.
Yeah, we've done gigs in the same places as well.
I was gonna say, you said music. You said you had to deal with music or whatever, and I was like, I feel like I feel like you would know, Jim.
Well, more than 3 people do music there, Jacob.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I don't know a whole lot about the UK, but I assumed that they had like the music was like,
I can't wait to tell him.
But we're within 15 to 20 minute, drive from each other, if that.
That's so great, man. Jim's a great guy. I love Jim. He hopped on when we did our first ever like Weekly Weird, which is like a segment that I do occasionally whenever I feel. The name Weekly Weird is very ironic, but he popped on there and he did one of the stories about UK and their bridge where the dogs they jump off of it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. He also takes part in the Knots Rock cast as well. Yep. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember what the other name of his is. Is it The Beard and the Ponytail?
I believe so, yes.
Yep, that's the other show that he does. Yep.
That's awesome.
Shout out to Jim. And the show logo is great. I mean, I've done a really bad version of it on the notes. But the fork with the spaghetti in it. And yeah.
So great. What's funny, I don't know if you've seen our new logo. That logo that you're referencing was only the logo for like 4 months because I knew somebody who I had went to high school with who was into like, digital arts and stuff like that. And so they threw it together for us. And it looks like a podcasting logo. It's a great logo. But we wanted an actual like mascot, I guess, if you will. And so I had this idea of a spaghetti monster or a kraken of some sort. And so the new logo, the one that is most notable for what we are, it's a microphone with a pair of headphones on it. And the tentacles are noodles. And it kind of fits in with the whole thing. So I love that logo. And it was a friend of a friend. Her name was Brittany Moore. And she did it for us. And it has been, it's eye catching. And if you really look at it, you're like, oh, his eyes are meatballs. And, he's got, it's one of the best logos. And I know that it's like, I'm partial, but I think it is an amazing logo.
That is super. That is great. But the other one is the one that shows on your show for Apple.
Yeah. I can't. Yes. And I can't get it changed. I've tried for years to get it changed. And then I just gave up.
I still like the OG logo though. I have one of our shirts from it, and it's one of my favorites. Just because it's like it was the logo that like kind of like started with it all or whatever. So
the new logo, it's like something that probably showing my age here again. It's probably like something that the Discover on Sequest DSV.
Yes, I was like, wait a minute, I don't know what that is, but I do know what that is. I got you.
Yeah. What you were saying, though, about that chatting, my other half, she took part in her first purposeful being on a podcast last week. She was on Review It Yourself with Sean.
Okay.
And so, actually, take it back. We watched a film for Stew World Order, which is a comic book related show.
Yeah.
So we watched a film for that, which we then had to review. And I said to Louise, well, you've watched it. And you took notes as well. You might as well be on it if you want to with me. And she, eventually she sort of gave in. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll do that. And then she enjoyed it so much. She says, oh, can I be on? Is there anything else set up for tonight? So I talked to Sean and Sean says, yeah, all right. I'll have a talk with Louise. And then that ended up being over 3 hours of chat.
It's intoxicating. Yeah. Just sitting there talking.
It's free therapy too, right? Like we deal a lot over here with mental health and stuff like that. And I think that the more people realize just talking is just like so therapeutic and like almost even like when we do an episode and one of us is in a bad mood for whatever reason, and like we get done, like those problems, whatever your ailing problem was, it kind of not necessarily goes away, but like your mood like just changes.
Yeah.
And we almost every episode that we're done, we're like, damn, that was a good time. Damn, I needed that, and it's free therapy, man. And even if like, as far as, how about this? How about advice? 2 things. Make a podcast that you yourself would want to listen to.
Yep.
Don't worry about people who listen. Don't worry about sponsorships. Don't worry about listeners, because that stuff will drive you absolutely mental. And just do it, right? Because the beauty of podcasting is that anybody can do it. There's still a relatively low barrier of entry. You just need a microphone, pay for somewhere to put it, and that's a recording program, and Audacity is free if you want to use it. You can do Zoom, whatever you want to do, and just talking. And sometimes talking into the void can just help you so much and put you in a better mind space. It's crazy. It's crazy how, as a society, not to get deep, sometimes we do get real deep on our podcast too. It's not all just like silly, dumb stuff. I mean, it mostly is, but we try to interweave it all. It's just crazy how, as a society, we've lost the ability to like have differencing of opinions, but also just having the ability to talk, right? Because so many people are like, I mean, you know, case in point, people in here, not everyone is gifted with the ability to just like talk. Some people are just, they come out of the womb and they're like ready to talk, and they can stand in front of a crowd of 30,000 people, no problems, as opposed to like some people can't even talk to like a group of 5. And the more you do something, right, repetition makes you better. Yep. But like you also just learn, like you said, like you both said, you learn how to talk to people. You learn how to navigate conversations. You learn, do I actually care about this thing that everybody else cares about? Or is it just something that like I'm told to care about because it's in the zeitgeist of things that everyone else seemingly cares about? And then what you realize, especially with us, is that like, we don't actually care about a lot. That sounds bad. We don't actually care about a lot of the things that people deem, this is the big thing. Like, because the way the news cycles work is like, it's every, you know, it's just like, here you go, here's the thing. And then like we move on. Right. And so just being able to slow down and have conversations and like live in the moment and just like learning about people, learning about like, we've literally never met before we did this. Yep. And like, it's been great. I mean, we're just sitting here just like shooting the shit. And it's like one of my favorite things to do in the world is just to sit down and have a gab with somebody.
Yep. I like the use of the word have a gab there. That was great. You listen to a lot of British people then saying gab, or is it a word over there?
It's not a word. Like I said, I have friends over there, so I'm a much more well-cultured person than Jacob is.
I get out sometimes.
Is this the Being Bitchy at Jakub show?
Yeah, well, that's every episode.
It could happen, yeah, sometimes, but it's all right.
Since Alex has already gone on to point number 12 of the podcast advice, go on, Jakub, what would you suggest to people about podcast before we carry on with the main show?
That's fair. Yeah. I would say my advice is just like what I do and just have a good time recording. I think with a lot of the way that kind of, I don't know how it is in the UK, but like US culture is very much so like YouTube, TikTok. You see all these people who are on there. Twitch is another service that we have here. I think it's everywhere. Never mind. I don't know. I don't know things, but like there's this idea that all I've got to do is like sit in front of a microphone and talk for an hour or 2 hours and post it online, and I'm gonna be able to eventually make a living off of it. Whereas I'm kind of the opposite in how I feel about it. I do this more so just to one, like a therapeutic means of like getting creativity out of me and just into the world, but two, just like to have a good time. I think that you can get lost in it, sitting there worrying about the numbers, worrying about like how many listens do I have this week? How many downloads do I have this week? And so my advice would be just to like, if you're not going to do this for your own sake and have fun, if you're looking to like make a living off of doing something like this, is that an option? Yeah, sure. A lot of the times the people who are making livings off of this have come preloaded with an audience or a fan base. Case in point, it's like the Always Sunny podcast. Love the guys, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But you're not, the idea is that like, oh, well, I can just start a podcast and be at that level, whenever in reality, like that's not going to happen. If it does happen, and it's not going to be for a while. And so like I guess my ultimate advice is just, lower your expectations. Is that a nice thing to say? Lower the expectations you have for success and kind of make the success your own point of view and not like some arbitrary number of like, oh, well, I'll be successful whenever I start making my first dollar off of doing this. Just have a good time with it. Don't do this for money. I guess at the end of the day, I don't know.
Don't start a podcast and suddenly give up your day job or night job.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you can certainly try that. It might not work out well.
You might be eating out of a trash can.
Right.
Yeah, but some of the best food I've ever had has been out of a trash can. So
You know that I don't know how to respond to that one, Jacob.
I was just gonna let it sit there because I don't know if you know this, but Jacob is infamous in our circles because he eats cereal in the shower.
I thought
And
you were
don't
going to say
mean, like,
Jacob is a
dry
raccoon.
cereal. Yeah, he is a raccoon. But his one of the very few like first episodes, and it has still to this day is still talked about. He eats a bowl of cereal with milk in a shower.
I mean, okay, so when you say it like that, it's like you make it sound like I do it every single day. You know, it's supposed to be a celebrated event. You just got done mowing the lawn. You're really hot. And so you want to combine two things to save time. And so you just hop in the shower. You got your bowl of cereal. It's a nice contrast. All right. You got the cold milk and the cereal, like you're eating it. You got the hot water on your back. It makes sense when you try it. All right. It sounds weird.
We've had people try it and they said it's awful.
They don't, that's because they're doing it wrong. Okay.
Okay. See, and this is how it goes. It's everybody else's fault except for Jacob.
No, I know how to enjoy it. All right. That's their fault that they're not enjoying it.
Now, I've got a suggestion here, but it might be tricky to do. You ready, Jacob? You ready?
Okay. All right.
So it might contain a bit of plumbing work needed. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. I do like a DIY project.
So if you could rework it that your shower lets out warm milk instead, your cereal is being constantly topped up by warm milk as you're bathing yourself in milk.
Ugh.
I mean,
it works with porridge.
I don't know. I think that the whole concept of like eating cereal in the shower is like you have to have the cold milk though. So I think because like warm milk's going to put me to sleep. I feel like so
it's the contrast.
The warm. Yeah, but
it's
I think a lot of people get
beer
lost
in a hot shower.
A lot of people get lost in thinking that like, oh, well, how do you eat the cereal? And it's like, well, you got to turn your back, have the shower hitting your back, all right, and then you have to have the bowl of cereal in front of you. You can't be like a monster and have the bowl in front of you while the water's hitting you in the face and then also dribbling off your face into the bowl. Like, no, that's gonna result in a bad bowl of cereal. You gotta don't get the water in the cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, where to go out from that? Where to go from that? I mean, would you say that that's one of your standout shows, or are the shows that stand out more than the one about the eating cereal in the shower?
Well, I don't know, because like what I deem as like, oh, this is a good episode, are ones that like don't hit, but ones that I'm like that was an okay one. People that listen to the show find like you said, like they'll find little things and like be like, oh my gosh, that was so funny. Or like, I love how passive aggressive this like you said this thing to Jacob and like it just totally went over his head and he's oblivious to what you said. And so I don't know, like asking me what the best episode of the show is I don't know. It's a double-edged sword because I like the ones with the guest. I also like if I had to do one that doesn't include guests, it's probably the most relatable episode ever, just because it just makes me laugh. Anytime I'm as this weird as this sounds, anytime I'm having like a really bad day and I'm like in a really bad mood, I'll throw that episode on and listen to how like just mortified I am at being at the doctor's office, not being able to piss in a cup. I just
it's the funniest thing. Yeah,
it's really so funny. Like things just get exacerbated because like then I get in my own head that I can't pee in this cup, and then I've got to go to the bathroom, and then like it's quiet and like I'm uncomfortable and like I'm sweating and like I know that like the doctor or the nurse is like waiting on me to pee and I can't leave until I piss in this cup, and it just becomes like a thing on top of thing on top of thing, and it is so funny. It is like, I mean, we were crying, the both of us were crying, laughing at just how awful my situation was, and so like I don't know, but
that's also my one of my favorites, the most relatable episode ever.
Very first Halloween one, I'm telling real life things that have happened to me that are unexplainable, not necessarily ghosts, but just things that have happened to me. It was a very early episode, but like just unexplainable things that happened to me personally. And Jacob was on the edge of his seat the whole time.
God, so good. He's such a good storyteller. Alex is a really good storyteller.
I don't know if I'm a good storyteller, but I have the ability to fill in details with diatribes.
I'm not good at it. I also like Podcast Me Daddy. That was another episode. Just because I think we unironically used the word daddy several times. And it started off as like something that we absolutely hated.
You
but
hate
then by the
it.
end of the I absolutely still hate the using the term daddy like in any kind of means other than like your kid calling you dad.
What he means is like
weird.
if he's watching a
pornography
pornography film and they use daddy,
it's just weird
unironically, and he doesn't like it. And then but see, the thing about Jacob is once he lets something like that out in the wild, everybody that listens to the show will then bombard him and troll him to death about it till he likes it. And then he just like accepts defeat.
Well, Jacob has put himself down there, but he has wonderfully transitioned to, explaining about your being a good writer. So another reason why we're chatting is, and we saw it on the video, we saw it on the, Jacob's got some of the art for this in the background of a comic.
I do.
Yeah, Alex,
that's
got it.
Yep, you've got some great artwork from this comic book that you're working on, Polar Destroyer, which looks fabulous. I love the polar bear. That's a great polar bear that you've done there, and
it's
nice outfit. So, go on then. Explain to people what Polar Destroyer is.
In short, Polar Destroyer is about this anthropomorphic polar bear. In this world, there are no humans, right? Animals can talk. They walk around. They inherit the earth. And so they're the kings of the north, right? And so the penguins have always been sort of fodder for the polar bears, and everybody has access to technology and all the things that we have. And so the penguins start this uprising, and they start essentially exterminating the polar bears. Like all of the lesser animals sort of band together, and they want to take out the people who have been, the predators of them. And he, in various ways, without giving away the plot too much, he becomes a cyborg. His name is Jack. And if you like 80s cheesy action movies, over the top violence, a little bit of maybe Dragon Ball Z in there with like how some of the art is done, it's right up your alley, man. It's been a passion project for about a decade, and in various forms of motivation and starting and stopping. And I mean, you're a musician, you understand how this works. You get like really into it, and then like you kind of just hit like a block, and then you come back to it with a new like perspective. And like I said, it's taken a couple different forms over the years. And then in the last 6 months, I have gotten so much done, and I'm at a point now that I never thought I would be, which is that I'm almost done with a Kickstarter campaign. It's almost funded, which I was just like is unfathomable at this point to think that I'm here. And I don't know. It's just I wrote it. I had the vision. I created it, and then I've had various artists throughout the years who I've sort of got commissioned pieces with, and then I finally found the guy. His name is Hugo Toronzo, and he's from Cuba, and we sort of just like hit it off really quickly, and I commissioned him to do the piece that you saw. Yeah. And I was like, man, this is it. Like, it's just this is what it's supposed to be. And it just sort of kind of snowballed from there, no pun intended. And like, here we are, man. Like I'm less than $1,000 away from getting it funded. And it's kind of surreal, to be honest. And, we'll see where it goes.
Well, it looks cool because it reminds me of some of the stuff that I've read by, I'm trying to think of the writer now. God, why can I never think of the people when I need to?
I have that problem all the time. Don't worry.
But
I can't remember anything. So,
but yeah, it's like a lot of these really good indie comic book writers or graphic novel writers. A lot of, it's got that sort of factor to it. So you're like the Stan Lee to the guy you were mentioning, in being your Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
I'm trying to think of another one, like, John Romita and all that.
I don't necessarily think that I am a Stan Lee, but you said it, not me.
I'm just trying to think of a creator like, yeah.
Martin Scorsese. Yeah.
That's a movie director, not
he's a creator. He's a creator, so I mean, I'm sure he could do it.
But since you are UK based, I will say that, like, I shout out to Jim, he backed it. But I have a digital only tier because that shipping from the US to the UK is pretty gnarly. So if anybody is like, yo, this sounds like a rad idea, again, like you can find it. Just look up Polar Destroyer on Kickstarter. You can pledge $10. It'd be $10 US, and you can get yourself a digital copy. Any and all support is deeply appreciated. I'm at the point now where I have exhausted all avenues of people within friendship circles and friends of friends. It's now completely in the hands of strangers. And that's a scary thing as someone who has poured a lot into this project over the years, especially in the last 6 months, as far as a monetary is concerned. And like, it's just something that I want to see made. It's just like, it's just like, it's my first comic book. It's also his first comic book. It's not his first piece of art, but it'll be his first full book. And I think it's just, I think it's super rad. Obviously I'm a little biased, but I would love for this to be like, for the UK to be like, yo, this is rad. And then like, it sells like gangbusters over there. That'd be great.
I'm glad that you said that, because I was actually looking at the Kickstarter campaign and thinking to myself, I looked at it and the different rewards, and I thought, I saw the post to anywhere in the world, and I thought, really, I'm not really sure whether I should go for that offer, because I know how much postage cost coming from America to the UK. It's ridiculous how much it's gone up over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And Jim's a friend, so like he backed the physical, and I thought he might throw a couple of things in there for him, just because like I know how hard it is to get it over there. So then I had somebody reach out randomly. They're from Australia, and they're like, "Yo, I would love to support this," but he's like, "I can't pay that, that postage fee." And I was like, "You know what? I'll just do a digital only tier." And it really opened up, because I got people from Canada, I got people from Australia, I got people from the UK. It really opened up the avenue of people to do it, because you want it to be as accessible to as many people as possible. So digital is definitely the way to go. $10, it'll get you a copy of it for sure.
You've sold me. I'm doing it.
I appreciate it, man.
But, while we're at it, just explain to people how to find that campaign then for Polar Destroyer, and how to back you then on Kickstarter, and then we'll carry on after that.
Well, you just go to Kickstarter.com and you can type in Polar Destroyer, the full 2 words, and it should pop up, because there's nothing else that has that name, and it should take you straight to it. We have until June 18th, I believe, is when the
12
campaign
days
ends.
remaining.
Yeah, so 12 days as of this recording. I'm in the 3-digit mark, which is great, because I've been in the 4-digit mark ever since it started. It's less than $1,000. And if you're anywhere outside of the US, like, it'll ship to you. But if you're really just looking to like get in on the ground and like just really help somebody get something done, $10 is probably your best bet. Just because it's a flat $10, it's not going to cost you any sort of additional shipping fees or anything like that. There might be tax. I don't know how taxes work outside of the US. But and you will not be charged unless it is completely funded. So you can put your $10 in now, and you won't have to have the $10 in your bank account until the 18th of June. And again, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell anybody who is like into like helping others achieve a thing. And it means more than words can express, that like there's this many people, and that I've gotten this far already that like there's enough people outside, because there's, yes, obviously I have my friends, but outside of my friends and people, there's people who genuinely like are supporting the idea, and they're like, yeah, this looks cool, man. Like I'm here to help, and that means a lot, because I'm as open as I am as a person. I'm very, what's the word, Jacob? I'm very, it's not negative. People can perceive me as a negative person. I am a realistic person, and I view
pessimistic.
It's not pessimistic because there's a negative connotation in pessimism.
No, it's agnostic. No, that's a different. I don't know words.
Okay, I'll put it this way. I don't typically ask for help. All right, it's
stubborn.
Just the way.
Stubborn.
No, stubborn's up there, but also I have a renewed sense in people's ability to help others, right? Because I'm a very giving person, as standoffish as I can be, as abrasive and stoic as stoic was the word I was looking for, is that I often am.
Oh, stoic,
I will go out of my way to help someone who I deem worthy to be helped, right? Like I give. And now this is like the first time where it's not anyone's turn to reciprocate, but it's like I've put out all this good energy and all this good vibes, and I've done all these things, and I've helped all these people, not for any other reason other than I just genuinely wanted to. But now I'm on the opposite end of that for like the first time in my life. So it's a very strange thing to deal with for me as someone who is like, I've put this out into the public, and it literally is in strangers' hands for it to be made. Like I can do this all day, I can write all day, I can do all these things, but in order for it to be a thing, it is now in the hands of complete strangers who I'm not good at selling myself. I can only lead a horse to water, right? I can't make the horse drink the water, and I'm not calling anybody a horse.
You can if you shove the horse in the water.
Right. So. And so I just think that, I think it's a rad idea. I think the art is great. It is a comic book. So like Hugo and I, we're putting everything that we possibly can within our means into this. And we hope that people love it. At the end of the day, like full transparency, there is 5 issues at minimum that are from, there are 3 different sagas, but like one complete saga is mapped out all the way. It's not completely written, but like, just know, like, this is not the end of the story. It will continue various means throughout whatever, but we got to get this first one made in order
to steps.
To kickstart the process, no pun intended again, to get it going and be a thing in the world.
Feels like you intended that pun a little bit, but it's whatever.
That there explained what these two are about, their friendship, and it was like a micro version of their show just then.
Oh yeah.
So have you got any favorite comics or graphic novels that you've enjoyed yourself, or what sort of inspiration, or are there any that have been inspiration for this?
I am the comic reader in the group. Jacob will consume it casually, but he doesn't. He's more of like an anime guy, where I'm more
manga,
comics.
Sir?
Yeah, whatever. Either way, yeah, manga is the whatever. It doesn't matter. So obviously growing up, I'm a 90s kid, so X-Men and Batman, the animated series, were pivotal for me in getting me into reading comics. I've read comics pretty much my entire life. I go to the comic book shop every week. And my favorite comic in general, my favorite character would be Moon Knight. I also like Batman. I like more grounded stories, like street level guys. Like the big, events, and like Superman's great, but like there's no relatability to me, and people are going to get mad from Superman. I like characters that are vulnerable. I like characters that are flawed, because I am a flawed person, and I like to be, as much as I love capes and costumes, there's not a lot of inspiration from that front in terms of like things that I would want to write. I've got a bunch of ideas for stories that I've sort of accumulated over time. And this is just one of those like random things that sprouted in my brain, and like you riff with some friends on the job, and then it just never left my brain. And I thought it was a cool enough idea that I would like sort of elaborate more on it. And then, like I said, over time it has evolved. But like, the thing about writing your own stuff, like the downside is that, you know, it has to be kickstarted and all that stuff. But like, also I can do whatever I want. Right. And there's the freedom in that is kind of crazy. If I had to pick like my favorite, if you like set me down and you're like, okay, I need your favorite story, I adore Batman the Long Halloween. It is my version of like, the kids from the 80s will point to like the Dark Knight Returns as like, oh, this was like the moment where, you know, comics jumped the shark from being like a you know, funny pages into like a serious medium. For me, that's what the Long Halloween is for me. And it is at its core like everything that I love about Batman. It's a detective story. It's, you know, a who's who of the rogues gallery, and it's one story told across, you know, 12 issues. It's my absolute favorite like book. It's my like favorite Batman story, my favorite comic story. As a fan of Moon Knight, it's been a rough go for the past couple of years in terms of everything else, but like as far as the comic book is concerned, it's been fantastic. And friend of the show, Jed McKay, who is the current writer for Moon Knight and Avengers, is actually going to be on the show next week. Again, he's been on our show a couple of times. So, but as far as like capes and costumes, no real inspiration from that. Growing up, my dad, a big fan of 80s movies, so I grew up on those. Also, another like untapped market for me that most people don't know is I like Westerns, like spaghetti Westerns. Yeah. And so like I have some stories there that I would like to tell with a little bit of you know, Monster Hunter vibe into it.
That Western thing, that reminds me of so this is going to be a nasty word for some people, or nasty thing for some people. Jonah Hex from the DC world.
Oh yeah, I love Jonah Hex, dude.
Now, I think I was saying to somebody that with things the way that they are with DC, I think they'd do well to try and bring that out as a film again, but not the same way that they brought out the previous attempt at the film. But I said to somebody that the thing is, you've got the way that Marvel are doing it with their films, and in some ways, I'm not sure how I feel about the you know, DC trying to almost replicate the Marvel thing in essence. I like the whole idea in some ways of DC being completely different and looking at these different things and almost creating like these individualistic films. And then much further down the line, if there's the possibility, they should have just carried on like that. And then eventually, if they were able to, they could have gone to the, you know, the crossover events or whatever. And Jonah X, I think, is the sort of thing where I think DC have possibly got a really good high ground there for creating something that's unique in, you know, comic book related film.
Sure. And with Flashpoint coming out next week, and set to reset their cinematic universe, maybe they'll get it right this time. I have my doubts. Yeah. But I am someone who I've hit the age of where like the MCU is not made for me. And my transgressions aside for how they treated Moon Knight, people who enjoy it, that's great. But I no longer consume anything of the MCU. And to be honest, I don't really consume much of comic book movies anymore, just because for whatever reason, like the quality went down and it no longer became worth my time. You know what I mean? Because like that's a huge investment into like these sort of things. Whereas like with comic books, if you don't like the comic book, you can just stop buying it, and then eventually you'll be able to pick it up again because they're going to redo it or they're going to start a new story. Whereas like, you know, with the MCU, they've put 15 years into this thing, and it's like, okay, it's not for me anymore, which is fine.
So Jakub doesn't isn't into the comic book world as much as you, so it's a bit less of a big, pull to go into. What do you particularly like then, Jakub?
I like manga. That's what I've been into recently. I've been trying to read more because I struggle with reading because I can't focus for long. But I like manga, which is I guess it's just the equivalent of like, comic books here in the US. But I know I've been trying to watching anime as well. Like I've been watching a lot of anime and whatnot, but I've been trying to. I don't like waiting for things, which is something that is prevalent in our episodes or whatever. But so instead of like with Demon Slayer, which is like it's on its current run, really good, got high remarks or high scores as far as like people loving the episodes. I don't like waiting for things, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and I ended up finishing it before I finished the series. So I just got finished with that, and I started One Piece, which is like I got a little ways to go. There's like 1,000 chapters or something like that. It's ridiculous, but yeah, I don't get out very much. I don't read a lot, so
bit of a oh my gosh, I can't talk. A bit of a recluse he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, got a bit of a live reaction here. Are you ready?
Okay.
Jim Plum says, you ready? He says, when is the next Spaghetti Town Slam Down event?
Oh gosh.
Oh boy.
This guy.
So we did this thing. I guess we started about a year ago where I grew up a huge fan of professional wrestling. And I thought in my head, so we have this Twitch, and Twitch is a hard market to like sort of tap because of whatever reason. But we're like, oh, what can we do that's different? That's not just like, playing games or whatever on Twitch.
Yep.
And I was like, well, we'll just take all of our like our closest friends that are also like diehard listeners of our show. We'll create them. We'll give them a wrestling gimmick, and we will have our own wrestling league, but we don't actually play it. We let the computer do it. So everything, like we set everything up, but like how things play out is up to the game's discretion. Now, it's been fun. It's been great. We do it once a month. That's all we could commit to. So we've had like, we've been telling these stories in our Discord, like, oh, hey, you remember what happened 3 months ago and this or whatever. All this led up to we had one big event, went swimmingly, went whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Game is not great. It's broken. It's janky. It's terrible. And all that makes for a fun experience when you're just watching and it's like, this is so stupid and so bad that it's good. But we got to a point to where like everything that could have ever went wrong on a stream went wrong. Like Jakub had done all this work for like, transition screens and like polls and like all this work going into the Twitch. Nothing worked. We couldn't get anything to work. And then the game itself just flat out stopped working. Like it would just completely shut off. And to the point of like, we were there, we tried to restart it like 3 times, and it just like pretty much killed all of our motivation to even like want to continue, just because it's one thing for the game to be bad. It's another thing for the game to be bad and to also not work. So
we're reworking some things. We're thinking about it. Right now it's on hiatus. So the next Slam Down event is to be determined.
Yes.
I guess will be an answer to Jim's question. Also, shout out Jim. You're great. Love you.
Yes. Jakub gave you the short version. I gave you the long version because that's what I do.
That's how it works on your show.
You can't just ask me a yes or no question. I have a hard time answering it in a simple yes or no.
I guess to answer the question, no. So,
no, now stop asking us. So, I mean, this next one could be for either of you, I suppose. I mean, Alex is the person who's written the book, but I mean, both of you might have advice for people who want to write themselves or to be creative.
Got tons of advice. So,
give me your advice, Jakub.
Yeah. So if you want to be a writer, I think my main advice would be just to write, every day, be writing. You got to be on that grind 24/7. You got to write constantly.
He's being facetious.
No,
this is fun of his parents.
This is what I do all the time. Is like you got to rise. You got to write. You wake up 4 a.m. It's a good time to write. Your brain's going. It's the witching hour. I think. Is it 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.? That's the witching hour.
I don't know.
I think it's 4 a.m.
I don't know any witches.
Oh, that's fair.
I do actually, but I'll ask
you know
them.
a witch?
If you know a witch, we need one for the podcast.
Okay.
So bad.
This is a weird side tangent here, but if you actually know a real life witch, I would love to have her on the show for Halloween, because both Jacob and I are entirely convinced that somewhere along the line, someone in my lineage, like 150 years ago, besmirched a witch, and they've put like an inconvenient curse on me to where like it's sort of like Murphy's Law, but like nothing is like detriment to my life. It's just that the annoyances of life always rear their ugly head. It's a joke because my last name is Osborne. We call it the Osborne curse, where it's like it's now become a bit because it's like, of course something went wrong because of the Osborne curse. And it's like my dad was the same way. Anytime a project would start, he would spend like, okay, he spend $200 to fix his car to get one thing fixed, and then something else breaks, or like, oh, we did this. Like, it's just literally, if you know a witch, I'm like 100% sure. Like,
we're trying to break the curse. Yeah.
I want to talk to her or him.
Them. But yeah, end of the day, my writing advice is just write constantly, just any idea you've got, write about it, expand on it, think about it. And that's all I got. Alex, what do you got? You're a better writer than I am. So
thank you, Mr. Robbins.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I honestly just write, just do it, just create it, man. Just start with an idea, explore that idea, and then get it to where it's a presentable thing, to where like you have enough there that if someone was to pick up this thing randomly, they'd be like, yeah, okay, I see where you're going. Then you get into the details of dialogue and all that. I wrote a comic book. I have no idea if it's any good. I don't know if people will like it. I'm just a little bit further along than the average Joe as far as writing something and making it become a thing. So just don't stop. Just keep working on it. You may put something down. It's just like songwriting, I assume. Like you have this melody that you really like, but you can't, flesh out the song for 3.5 minutes, but you still like this melody. Okay. You like this idea of a polar bear that, is kind of like the Terminator, but like, why? Like, why is he a Terminator? Why is he killing these penguins? Like what? Then you just I personally started with an idea and built out from there, rather than just sitting down and writing, because I feel like if you just sit down and you want to write something and you're tricking your brain into something that becomes work instead of fun. Like you're like, I have to do this. I have to write this story. No, you don't, unless you're, being paid to do that. Then that's different, which I'm not. So I don't know.
You never know. You might get that sort of, recognition that, Brian Michael Bendis, he started with a self-publish that ended up getting taken on by Marvel.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. With but so just in passing, I'll mention that Jim just said, oh, what about the cereal in the shower? And I said, we've already mentioned that. I said, and just wait for the show to come out.
I told you.
Yep. So what do you listen to podcast wise yourselves?
Jacob first.
So he doesn't listen
mainly.
To I don't listen a ton. I don't even listen to our own podcast. I just kind of fallen off with it. I've been listening. As always, I keep up with the last podcast on the left, just because like I'm into the weird stuff and whatnot. But and serial
weird
killers
as in
and
cryptids,
like
not weird as
cryptid serial killers. Just whatever there. So, but that's. I mean, other than that one, I don't really have a ton that I listen to. Just my attention span's waning as of late. So
I've spoken to a couple of shows that talk about that, like Tracing Owls and there's a few shows and I can't flipping remember them again. My memory, age. What about you?
I listened to a podcast called Tell 'em Steve Dave, and it's very much how our show is structured, like where it's just conversations, topics. You talk about the topics, you kind of move on. If you know anything about Impractical Jokers or the Comic Book Man, they are friends with Kevin Smith of Clerks fame. It's Brian Johnson, Brian Quinn, and Walt Flanagan. It's just three guys. They just, and they're up to like, I don't know, almost in 1,000 episodes at this point. It's been going on for over 15 years. So it's one of the longest running podcasts that I still listen to. I listen to I listen to most of my friends' podcasts, whether it's the Twisted Cave, the Geek Exploration podcast. Help me out, Jacob. You talk about blanking. There's so many people
Twisted Cave,
that support our show that I also reciprocate and listen to theirs. Some of those are a little more sporadic in their releases, and it's fine. Life happens.
The Sound of History is one I listen to.
Sound of History. That's another one.
Just trying to Ponytail the Beard, I think, is the one I've been listening to the most of. But
I'm trying to just get those plugs out for all of our friends and stuff. But that's about. I mean, I don't listen to a lot. My go-to thing is music. I listen to music while I'm working and stuff. So,
So where can people find you and get hold of you then, guys?
Well, Jacob's not on any social media, so you're not going to find him anywhere.
I run a TikTok. So
you run multiple TikToks.
Yeah, I got a TikTok or two.
You can find us on Twitter at Spag Policy Pod. That's SPAG Policy Pod. You can find us on Instagram. Just look up Spaghetti Policy Podcast, and we should pop up. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on all of those podcasting platforms except for Google, because they blacklisted us and we don't
Google's
know why.
Trash.
We don't know why. We don't know what happened.
We were too good.
We've been trying to figure it out for over 2 years why we're not on there, because we were on there and then suddenly we weren't on there, and I don't know. It shows that we're on there, but if you search for us, we're not on there. It's a whole thing. So we're just blacklisted, but anywhere else, Spotify, iTunes.
I have an email. Jakub at gmail.com as well. You can email me there. Probably.
Yeah. You can always send us an email, Spaghetti Policy Podcast, and it does not matter what it says or what it's about. We will read it. No, we will read it.
I mean, we might, yeah.
I love when people send us stuff. It's great.
I really do too. I love like interactions with fans and whatnot, and not even just fans, just people.
Guys, send them emails with all sorts of like questions and things, and they could probably end up doing an episode answering all of those.
We did that. Episode 200. Sure. We had a call-in show where people would call in and ask for advice. And why would you ever ask us for advice? But they got it.
So Discord, go on.
Yeah, we have a Discord. I would have to give you the link because I don't know the actual link, but it's What's Your Spaghetti Policy on Discord. It's a nice little community in there. We're always just, shooting the shit, talking about dumb stuff. We do have a thing that we started, like I said earlier, with episode 200 or episode 201 actually, where one of the weekly bits we do is a spaghetti top 5, and we talk about we take a user submitted top 5 and we make our own list out of that. And it can be anything as simple as your top 5 favorite fast food hamburgers, or as like nuanced as, the top 5 anime characters who would be best at doing your math homework when you were in 3rd grade. Something along those lines. Like there is no rules or ramifications for what the top 5 is. The more we have, the better. And then we just pick one, and we normally let whoever is the rotating 3rd chair go in and pick one that they want to talk about. And then we do it. We typically end the show with the top 5, and it's normally like a 20-minute segment. We almost always riff on it.
That's cool. Anyway, thanks for speaking with me today, guys.
Dude, thanks for having us, bro.
Thank you so much for having us. This is a great time.
It might sound like I'm rushing, but Alex has to go and do something.
I do. I got to go back to work.
I guess I should work some today too.
Anyway, thanks for speaking with me. You can find Pods Like Us. Just go podslikeus@gmail.com to contact us. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.